How does it feel to write a book, to pour out your wisdom, your insight, your knowledge, to put your sweat and your blood to write and publish a book, but yet not make any sale, not be able to sell your books, and end up stacking your books in your garage to collect dust like an artifact, or forget your books on Amazon's virtual shelf where it collects virtual dust? I know how it feels because I've written 17 books, and these were some of the things that I encountered when I began my journey as an author. And thankfully, I was able to figure out ways to overcome the problem of not being able to sell your book. So if you're listening to this and you're having problems with low book sales or no book sales, then I got you. No problem. If you've got no book sales, no problem, because in today's conversation, I'm going to be sharing with you 3 money-making tips that can help you generate wealth from your writing, make money from your unsold books. How does that sound? Now, if that sounds like something that interests you, stick with me and don't go nowhere. Before we go into the meat of this conversation, before I begin to tell you the different money-making strategies that you can use to generate massive income from your book if you're not able to sell your books yet, I'm going to talk to you about the problem, because if we don't know the problem, then the solutions won't have any value, won't make any sense to you, right? So why is it that many authors are unable to sell their books? Why is it that many brilliant, talented authors, they spend time and resources pouring out their knowledge, pouring out their insight, pouring out their expertise, pouring out their accumulated experience into a book, packaging it as a book, and then they try to sell it? They put it on Amazon, they put it on Lulu, they put it on Draft to Digital, they put it on Ingram Spark, with hopes that they are going to make money, they're going to make a killing out of it. They've even done some math and calculations that, hey, if 100 people buy my book, I'm going to make XYZ dollars. That was me. Many years ago, when I first wrote my book, I thought I was going to be a gazillionaire the moment I hit publish, right? And then when I hit publish, 1 week passed, 2 weeks passed, 3 weeks passed, and I was like, hey, why ain't I rich and famous yet? I'm sure that has been your story, or you may have been there before, but I'm just telling you, this was my story. I'm like, I thought I was going to be a millionaire because I was told that Amazon had 40% of the market shares. I was told that millions of people visit Amazon every other day to buy books from Amazon. And so my natural instinct was that, hey, just put your book on Amazon and go to sleep, and wake up the next morning and you will see alerts and notifications telling you you've made XYZ amount of money from your book sales overnight. But guess what? That wasn't the case. And I know that's the same story for 97% of authors who put their books on Amazon or on whatever other third-party platforms that's out there that promises you heaven on earth when you put your books there, only for them to leave you to do the heavy lifting at the end of the day without giving you the required support and required tools and resources that you need, right? So what's the problem? Why is it that many authors struggle to sell their books? Why is it that many authors write great books but end up stacking those great books in their basement like an artifact, or stacking them in their garage to collect dust, or forgetting that they even published a book because they can't remember the last time they received a notification from Amazon or from any other third-party platform telling them, hey, you just made a sale, right? Some people even go through the excruciating pain to log into their Amazon dashboard in hopes that they will see some sale. And when they click the reports on the Amazon tab, they see no sales to report. Some even take an extra step to hit the refresh button to see if maybe by hitting the refresh button, some sale will magically happen and appear on their dashboard. But no matter how hard they hit the refresh button, nothing changes. It still tells them no sales to report. So what's the problem here? There are 3 fundamental problems that I'm going to be sharing with you in this video. And of course, the problems could be more than these 3, but these 3 are the main problems that I want to share with you in today's conversation because of the scope of today's conversation. Now, the first thing that I typically look at, and this is something that 90% of authors fall for. This is a trap 90% of authors fall for. This is a mistake 90% of authors fall for that causes their books not to sell. And it is the mistake of writing a book with a bad title or a bad subtitle. In fact, some authors don't even know what a subtitle is. Now, it will shock you. You may be listening to this and you're probably even one of those authors who don't even know what a subtitle is. I've spoken to hundreds of authors. I speak to hundreds of authors every other month, and I talk to them, I listen to their problems, and I try to help them where possible. And one of the things that I've come to discover is that not many authors even know what a subtitle for a book is. There are many authors who go ahead and they write a book with just a title, with just a bad title, with no subtitle. So there's the problem of having a bad title and a bad subtitle, or a good title and a bad subtitle, or a good title and no subtitle, or a bad title and no subtitle. Whatever variation there is within the scope of that mistake of title and subtitle mismatch, that is one big reason why most authors have books that never sell. You see, the title and the subtitle is so powerful because it is where the conversation starts when a potential reader picks up your book, right? When a potential reader picks up your book, the conversation starts from when they see the title and then the subtitle. Now, listen to this title. This is the title of one of my books, and it's titled 4D Thinking. And then the subtitle is usually what follows, right? The writer that follows after the main title. And so if you're listening to this and you don't know what a subtitle is, or you've written a book without a subtitle, then you need to fix that. Your book needs to have a subtitle. A book without a subtitle is a waste of real estate on the front cover of your book, right? Because the subtitle is supposed to be something that gives the potential reader a clear promise of what they can expect to receive by reading the book. The title should be a clear word picture, right? 4D Thinking. That's the title of this book. And then the subtitle should be a powerful promise, right? Now, the subtitle is Extract Your Superpowers, Solve Big Problems, Achieve Better Results, Make Smarter Decisions, and Live Your life, or rather, and live your dreams with fourth dimensional thinking. Wow. Now, I came up with this title and I knew that it was going to be successful when I saw the reaction of people in the marketplace, right? One of the ways you can know if your title and your subtitle is good is you show it to people, and people who are not necessarily your friends or family, put it in front of people who don't have any interest in making you happy per se, and get their honest feedback. How do you feel about this title and subtitle? Does it really speak to you? And whenever I did that, people always said, wow, to this title and subtitle. And that's how I knew that I got my title and subtitle for this book right. But that's not the focus of today's conversation. The focus of this conversation is to help you overcome that mistake of putting a bad title and a bad subtitle, or any variation of bad title and good subtitle in your book, because it can spook your potential clients. It can spook your potential readers. Your title and your subtitle should be like a hook that hooks people. When you're fishing, you want to have a hook that has a bait on that hook, so that when the fish, they see that food, they are hooked, they go for the food, and then they are hooked the moment they try to get that food. And that's what your title and your subtitle should be. It should be a hook. But when you have a bad title and a bad subtitle, or anything in between, your book, instead of being a hook, will be a spook. It's going to spook people. What's a spook? A spook is something that scares people, that drives people away. Instead of attracting people, it repels people. Now, that is one of the fundamental reasons why your books are not selling. And I know this because I work with many authors. I coach many authors, and 90% of the people I work with, they usually have this problem. And this is not because of any fault of theirs per se, but it's just because of the way we were raised. We were raised to create titles as though we were titling a textbook in school, we read books that were so difficult to understand. We read books that were so dense. We read books that had complex titles. We read books that had repulsive titles. We read books that had titles that spooked us every time we thought about them. And so we came out of school and we thought that when we write our own books, we needed to sound like professors too. We needed to sound like we were highly educated, and we felt like the only way to prove to people that we were clever was to embarrass people with complexity and to make the title of our book shrouded in complexity. But that's the recipe for failure. You see, in the university, when you use a one-syllable word in a place where you could have used a three-syllable word, you get penalized for that. You see, so we're trained in schools, in the traditional institution, to favor complexity over simplicity, right? And one thing I usually talk about in my book about creativity, one thing I talked about in the book titled Ignite Your Creativity, I'm trying to see if that book is within reach. Yes, the book is within reach. So in this book, I said something about that. I said, creativity is not complexity, but creativity is simplicity. So many people tend to think that, hey, if I make it complex, if I make it difficult to understand, then people will think I'm clever. Then people will think I'm creative. But that's not the case, right? Creativity is not complexity. Creativity is simplicity. And so you want to display your creativity as an author in the way you title your book, in a way that is simple to assimilate, in a way that a third grader can understand, because when you do that, it becomes easy for them to comprehend and contemplate and understand that this thing that you have created is for them. It becomes easy for them to enter the conversation that you're trying to initiate with your book and with your book title. But when you make your book look very complex in the title, right, you spook them. Now, there are 5 things to watch out for when coming up with a book title. And I'm going to share them with you quickly here, because I believe it's going to help you overcome the no book sales problems. Why? Because just a simple change of the title of your book can change the game for you as far as your book sales is concerned, right? So I want you to go back and review what you have put together as your book title and subtitle. You may not need to touch anything about the content, but just take a look at the title and the subtitle and see if you're making any of these mistakes. If your title sounds clever, but it's not clear, then that is something that could be hurting you and hurting your book sales. And so you want to avoid clever wordplay that only makes sense to you, right? I used to be a victim of that. In fact, I wanted to write a book one time, and I coined a word that does not even exist before in the dictionary. I coined that word, and I called it kingdomocracy, and I said, I'm going to write a book titled Kingdomocracy. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. If you're a celebrity, if you're a popular person or powerful or famous thought leader, you can get away with things like that. But if you're just coming up, and if you're not famous and you're just building your brand or building a following, or you just want to write your first book or your next book, that may not work for you, right? Because you're spooking the people, the very people that you're trying to hook, the very people you're trying to attract. You're spooking them by showing up with a clever play on words that only makes sense to you, right? And when you do that, the people that you're trying to reach will not benefit from that. Another thing that you want to avoid when coming up with your book title is to avoid the use of riddles and puzzles. This is another mistake that many people make. They want to show how skillful they are with puzzles and riddles, and so they make their book a puzzle. They make their title a puzzle. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you cannot explain or share some bits and pieces around the meanings, the underlying meanings of a puzzle when you're developing your book, the content of your book. But I'm talking about the title and the subtitle. You may have puzzles and riddles inside the book, but if you want people to actually open the book and see how smart and clever you are, you must make sure that the title is something that captivates and attracts, and not something that alienates and repels. So that's another thing you should watch out for. The first one I talked about is clever play on words that's only clear to you. Second one I talked about is the use of riddles and puzzles. You want to avoid those things like a plague. Now, another thing about bad titles that I want you to run away from if you're making those mistakes already is the use of niche industry jargon, inside lingo. Another problem that I found with many authors is that because they are well educated, because they are well read, they are learned people, they begin to use niche and industry jargon. They begin to use inside lingo as part of their title. And when they do that and they show up in the marketplace, the same thing happens. They spook the very people they are trying to hook. Why? Because you're using inside lingo, you're using esoteric language to communicate the title of your book. And you're missing the very purpose. You're missing out on the purpose of the title of your book. The purpose of a book title is to provide a clear word picture of what the reader is expected to receive by virtue of reading that book, or learn about by virtue of reading that book. And if it is not something they already think they need, or something they already know they should be learning about, or something that stirs up their curiosity, or something that brings about a contrast that forces them to want to learn more, you are missing the point of having a title. It would have been better if you had no title of that book than for you to have a title and use inside lingo in the outside world, right? So you want to fix that. Now, another thing you want to avoid when coming up with your book title is the use of ambiguity and abstraction. Time will fail me to give you examples and to go into details of how you can be making that mistake or how you can avoid that mistake. But just know that you should avoid any ambiguity in the title and subtitle of your book if you want that book to sell. And if your book is currently not selling, that is the first thing that I would look at. That's the first thing I would consider. So take these different things that I'm telling you about book titles and look at your book, x-ray that with your book, and see if you're making these mistakes. I'm going to drop a link in the description of this episode so that you can examine your book title and fix your book title in 10 minutes if you're making any of these mistakes. So check the link in the description for that. Link is going to show you different ways that you can make your book title better, and it's going to help you identify these mistakes with examples if you're making them. Now, the fifth thing that I'm going to be sharing with you is the use of weak language, passive language, soft language, right? In your title, you want to use active language. You want to use strong language in your title and make sure that it is not just a passive use of words, but it's an intentional use of words. And there are different strategies to make your book title, strong and compelling with the use of active language, right? But time will fail me to go into all of that. I'm going to drop the link in the comment section or in the description below so that you can take advantage of that link and get help in fixing your book title. Now, having talked about that, the second problem that most authors face that causes their books not to sell is that their books are buried. Now, what do I mean by their books are buried? You see, many authors have been deceived to think that when you put your book on a platform like Amazon, where there are millions of people visiting the platform regularly, you potentially get millions of book sales, right? That was the way I felt when I started. I felt, wow, so if millions of people visit that platform and I put my book there, maybe only 10% or 1% of the millions of people who visit that site will potentially see my book and buy my book, until I fell flat on my face in disappointment. I didn't realize that just the way millions of people visit that platform to buy books and buy other things, millions of people also visit the platform to sell books and sell other things. As a matter of fact, report has it that 7,500 ebooks get published on Amazon KDP every day, and approximately 1.5 to 4 million books get published every year on Amazon KDP. Now, what does that mean for you? It means that even though millions of people are showing up on that platform, it makes no difference because their attention is split across millions of things, and your book gets buried in the midst of it all because you show up and you publish a book, and the next day 7,500 new books have been published. And so Amazon is a system that is optimized to sell more books to more people and sell more things to more people, not necessarily to sell your book. And so when you go put your book on Amazon and go to sleep, you are burying your book. It's like putting your book in a graveyard. It's like digging up a grave and putting your book inside and closing it up and going to sleep. That's what's happening to your book, and that's why your book is not selling. Tell me, when was the last time you made a sale on Amazon? If you are honest, tell me how many books you sold when you put your books on Amazon. If you can be honest with me, tell me in the comment section how many books you've sold since you published on Amazon, or tell me how many books you've sold this week or of this month, right? That is a clear indication that your books are buried on whatever platform that you've put them, right? And the reason is clear, because your books have been forced to compete for attention where it is not needed. It's competing for attention among millions of other books that gets published every day, or rather every year. And guess what? It becomes so bad with the advent of AI now, because with AI, people can publish multiple books and just put it on Amazon. In fact, Amazon has had to restrict how many books per day people can publish right now, because with AI, people will just go generate a bunch of junk as low content books and put them on Amazon, right? Just because they want to make quick bucks. But if you're an author and you spend time to actually write a book, a real book, not a low content book that's just empty stuff, but a real book that contains transformation for people, and you put it on Amazon, you are competing with people that did not even do half the work that you have done. They just went on AI, they went on ChatGPT, they went on whatever AI tool, on Gemini, and then they copied a bunch of junk, they copied a bunch of empty pages, and they call that a low content book, and then they publish it on Amazon. There's nothing wrong with publishing a workbook, but when you're doing it as a strategy and you're publishing 10 to 20 low content books, there are many authors or so-called authors who have 50 to 100 books that they publish just to make money, right? But those are not the kind of authors I'm trying to help here, right? I'm helping authors who have a message, who have a story, who have an experience that they've documented in a book, right? In a real book, in a fully fleshed out book, and not just a low content book, right? But the thing is that you're now competing with people who have not spent the time, who have not spent the effort that you have spent in developing your book. You are competing with people who have gone to copy junk and put it out there, and they have more leverage because they can do 10 books in 3 days, they can do 20 books in a week. But you're spending a month, you're spending 2 months to write your book because you want to provide transformation for people. But now you're competing with people who will not even do half the work that you've done, and those people will definitely win you at that game. And that's what I call a commodity market. So when you go put your book on Amazon, you're intermeddling in what I call commodity market, and you're falling victim for this syndrome called commoditization. So you have allowed your book to be turned to a commodity, and when your book becomes a commodity, it means that you're competing on price, right? And it's always a race to the bottom. Another thing about being in the commodity market is that the competition sets the price. I don't want to be in a market where my price has become a democracy, right? When you go on Amazon, Amazon tells you the range within which you must set your book pricing, and if you go beyond that range, you get penalized for it, right? So you're like a tenant in a rented space, and you get told what to do, you get told how to do what to do, when to do what to do, and they don't even tell you why. Have you ever asked yourself, why will Amazon wait for 90 days before they give me the monies that I make from selling my book? Why? Why do I have to wait for 90 days? You don't even get to know why. You don't even have a say as to when you get your payout, despite all the work you put in writing your book. So this is part of the reason why you're struggling. This is part of the reason why you can't even make a sale, because you're competing on a field that is not level, right? You're competing against people who have more advantage than you because they will not do half the work you're doing. You're competing against people who are putting out low content books and publishing more books per day than you can, and you're competing against millions of books per year. So if you publish a book 5 years ago, it means about 4 million books per year approximately getting published yearly. In 5 years, that's about 20 million books that your book is competing with. Have you ever wondered why God said, I am God and there is none else? Have you ever wondered why God said, I am God and there is none beside me? I'm God and there's none like me, right? God is trying to tell you that, hey, I'm holy, I'm set apart. And so if you want to break out of the commodity markets, you must start thinking like God. How? God is holy. God says, I am the Lord and there's none beside me. I am God and there's none else. You need to figure out a way you can put your book in a place that it would not have to compete for attention with other books, with millions of books, so that your book would have nothing else beside it but your book, so that your book can have all the attention that it deserves, right? And so that you can actually gain control instead of being controlled by the system. Now, the third reason why most authors struggle with low or no book sales is because they have a broken book monetization system. And I already shared a bit about that system that is broken in my previous point, but I'm going to elaborate a bit more here. However, I wondered the implication of leaving your money for 90 days before it hits your account. Did you know that there's something called depreciation? There's something called time value of money. And so it means that if I pay you $20 today and you cannot access that money until after 3 months, the $20 I paid you today is no longer $20 when you receive it 3 months later. Do you know that that money has depreciated, right? And guess what? You don't even get $20 paid to you when you sell your book for $20. And that is something that really surprises me, because most authors have accepted that to be the norm. That is the height of extortion. You sell a book at $30 and you make $12 back. What happened to the remaining $18? Have you ever wondered to ask? They tell you it's for distribution, they tell you it's for printing, they tell you it's for shipping. But did you know that if you sold that book, that same book, for $30 on your own platform, you could make as much as $25 to $35 on a $30 book? Well, time will fail me to go into all of that, because right now I'm just telling you the problem, right? So you see that there's a problem with your book monetization when you rely on a third party to sell your book, when you rely on Amazon to give you your money 90 days after it's published, when you rely on a system that was not built to make you wealthy, but built to make another man wealthy. You become a leverage for them instead of using them as leverage. And what smart authors are doing right now is they are building a well-oiled machine. They are building their own system and they are building their own leverage to sell their books effectively and efficiently using those systems as leverage. Now, I've spoken about these three problems. The first one I spoke about was bad book titles and subtitle. The second one I spoke about was buried books. And then the third one I spoke about was broken book monetization system. So now that we've talked about the problem, are you ready to hear the solution? If you're ready, tell me in the comment section and tell me I'm ready. So here's the solution to fixing your no book sales problem. The first solution that I'm going to give you is to mirror the market. You want to sell books that the market wants. And the problem most authors have that's causing them to be broke and frustrated despite their hard work, despite their brilliance, despite their genius, is that they are selling books they like to sell instead of selling books people like to buy. You want to figure out a way to match your preferences to the pain of people. But most authors don't even care about the pain of people. They are so obsessed with sharing their knowledge, sharing their story, telling their story, without even obsessing about the problems that they are trying to solve in the marketplace. And when you do not have that dialed in, there's no value exchange, because people will only pay you money in exchange for value. And that's where wealth is right there. Wealth only comes to people who create value. And if you don't learn how to create value, wealth will run far away from you. Money will run far away from you. Whether you are an author selling books, whether you are a businessman selling some goods or importing stuff and exporting stuff, whatever business or trade that you're doing, if you don't learn to mirror the market, if you don't learn to provide the market what they are asking for, if you don't learn to speak the language of the market, you keep spooking people instead of hooking them. Think about this. Have you ever gone to a restaurant and the waiter walks up to you, or the waitress walks up to you, and then instead of asking you what you want to eat, they tell you what they like you to eat. They tell you what they want you to eat, right? You tell them that, hey, I want cheeseburger, and then they tell you, hey, why don't you take a different kind of burger? Because that is what we want you to take. How would you feel if you walk into a restaurant like that? Tell me in the comment section. What would be your reaction? What would be your reaction when you stepped into a restaurant and you ask for a particular flavor of rice, but they tell you, hey, no, we want to sell you this flavor of rice because this is our best flavor. And then you say, hey, no, that's not what I feel like eating right now. In fact, I'm allergic to that flavor that you want to sell me. But this is the flavor that I want to buy. And instead of selling you what you want to buy, they force what they want to sell on you, even though it's something that you're allergic to. How would you feel? Now, that is what most authors are doing when they show up in the marketplace with books nobody wants to buy, books nobody wants to read, and they force it down people's throats, and they think that by screaming louder and saying, hey, buy my book, hey, buy my book, they think by screaming louder, people are going to buy their book. They think by jumping higher, people are going to buy their book. They think by running ads more and more and more and more and being on people's faces, people are going to buy their book. But that's not the way to sell, right? And that's why they become cringy when they hear about selling, because they are doing it the wrong way. When you do it the right way, when you do your marketing correctly, selling becomes easy. Selling becomes like the icing on the cake. Selling becomes easy peasy, lemon squeezy. But when you do it the wrong way for your own reason, when you try to sell things for your own reason and not for their own reason, it becomes difficult to sell. And that's why your books won't sell. So you want to mirror the market to solve that problem. You want to cook only what people want to eat. You want to feed them with what they want. Feed them with what they want. And what they want may not be what they need. But that's why you're the author, and that's why you're getting paid, to figure out ways to solve their problems while giving them what they want and wrapping what they need inside what they want and serving it to them in a way that is acceptable to them. And at the end of the day, it's a win-win. They get what they want, they get what they need, you get what you want, and you get what you need. Win-win. In fact, it's a win-win-win. Now, that's the first solution that I'm going to prescribe for you to fix your low or no book sales problem. Now, the next solution I'm going to recommend to you is to create a cash flow machine. Instead of being a cash cow to third-party publishing platforms like Amazon, Lulu, Draft to Digital, and you name it, you need to figure out a way to create your own cash flow machine. Now, there's nothing wrong. I'm not necessarily saying you should never put your book on Amazon. Now, that is a decision you're going to have to make. But all I'm saying is that even when you put your book on Amazon, you must have a system that churns out money for you, a cash flow machine. And for some of you, that cash flow machine may be a sales page, a book funnel, a book pipeline, a landing page, right? Now, these are things that they may look simple, but they can work wonders for you if you dial them correctly. You dial them in correctly. So tell me in the comment section if you would like me to teach you or do a session or do an episode on sales page, landing page, book funnels, and book pipelines, or cash flow machine for authors, right? Cash flow machines for authors who do not want to rely on Amazon KDP and all the other platforms. Tell me in the comment section if this is something that you'll be interested in so that I can create that episode for you. Now, the third solution I'm going to give you is to turn your writing to wealth. Now, what does that mean? Like I said earlier, wealth is created when value is exchanged, and value is created when you understand the need that the person that you're trying to create value for has and wants to get a solution for. And so you want to figure out ways to identify the needs in the marketplace. You want to figure out ways to have conversations with the marketplace so that you can uncover what is valuable to them and present your solutions to them in a way that is valuable to them. The problem most authors have is that they want to sell what is valuable to them as authors to their readers and to their clients, and that doesn't work, right? This singular approach can change the game for you as far as your sales are concerned. So turning your writing to wealth also entails repackaging your book, repurposing your book, and extracting the core transformation in your book and turning it into different solutions like gaming experiences, applications, coaching programs, home study courses, audio programs, video programs, and a bunch of other things, right? Now, anybody can go and create an app that nobody downloads, or go and create a coaching program that nobody buys, or go and create a game that nobody pays for, all in the name of repurposing your book. There's an art and there's a science to all of these things. And if you would like to make all of these things work for you, it helps to get someone to help you, to get someone to walk you through all of these. And it doesn't have to be me. Just find someone out there that you trust that can teach you or help you or support you in turning your writing into wealth, right? When you can repackage your book idea, the core transformation in your book into different experiences that would outlive the pages of your book, that will set you up for massive income. And so you would not need to sell millions of books to be able to make millions of dollars from your book. Why? Because from this book, I can create an app and get people to subscribe to that app at $10 per month. And if I can get 1,000 people pay me $10 monthly, that's $10,000 monthly. And if I get $10,000 monthly in 12 months, that's $120,000 monthly from an app, a subscription app that I got from extracting the core transformation from this book. I can also turn this book into a coaching program. And if I get people into that coaching program at $20,000 or $40,000, you already know the implication of that. I can turn this book into a VIP day where people get to spend 8 hours with me in a yacht or spend 8 hours with me on a private jet, and I can teach them some of the cool stuff that I've documented here to help them scale their businesses into millions of dollars, right? And people will pay me $100,000 or more for this in a VIP experience. Now, you can turn your book into things like that. You can turn your book into a boot camp. You can turn your book into a home study course that you sell for $997. You can turn your book into an audio program that you sell for $297. The possibilities are endless as long as you have a book that is a hook and not a spook. And so that's why it's so important that when you're writing your book, you ensure that you're not just writing an information product, but a transformation product. When you are able to do that, the next step is to extract the core transformation from that book and create a cash flow machine that will put that book on steroids and get you paid. There's more to all of these things, and if you'd like to learn more on how you can fix your book sales problem, I invite you to join me for 5 days in the next Publishing Profits Challenge. I'll drop the link in the description or in the show notes below. Join me for 5 days and I'll help you fix your book messaging, your book marketing, your book monetization, your book methods, and your book momentum. And by the end of 5 days, you'll walk away with the keys to scaling your book idea and your book income to a 6 and 7 figure business. And so I'll leave you there for now. I hope you found this valuable. If you enjoyed this, tell me in the comment section, watch this episode or listen to this episode again so that you can extract all the things that were said that probably were not heard, and so that you can make the most of this experience. I'll talk to you soon and I'll see you on the next one. Till then, have a good one and bye-bye.